Welcome to a new daily top AskReddit video. Today's topic.
What was your, oh shit, this person is a psychopath, moment when meeting people? I was working as a night shift security guard in an apartment complex. I got a frantic call from a resident I could barely understand. Majority of our tenants were foreign students from China. I went up there and the tenant beckons me into his apartment. He had just moved in. Inside was a woman covered in blood holding her arm. I get them calmed down enough that I can understand what they are saying. She was his neighbor. She had broken up with her boyfriend, who pulled a knife and started trying to convince her to do mutual suicide with him. She made a break for the door and he slashed her on the way out. The neighbor, hearing the commotion, let her in and called me. The wound is extremely deep. The neighbor is already on the phone with police, and I tell both of them to stay put. I'm going to go get my first aid kit and come back. I tell them do not open the door unless it's me or the police. I got retrieve my kit and come back. When I get back, the neighbor's door is open and he's freaking out. Says the victim went back to her apartment to get her ID. People do some really bizarre things when they are panicking. I thought to myself, this is the dumbest thing I will ever do, and I went into her apartment. No weapons, not even body armor. I find her in her bedroom and tell her to forget the ID, we can sort that out later. When we went to leave, the ex-boyfriend is between us and the door, knife in hand. I'm standing between him and the victim. They are speaking Mandarin, which I only know a tiny bit of, so I can't understand what they are saying, but she is crying and pleading with him to stop. He on the other hand was stone cold. His voice was perfectly flat and even, no inflection at all. No emotion in it. He's standing perfectly still, not even shaking from adrenaline. He's not blinking. He's looking at her in the eye, and then he's looking at me and sizing me up before looking back at her. I could tell, in that moment, the only thing he was thinking about is whether he could kill me fast enough to get at her before she got away. In that moment my only thought was, I'm going to have to kill him if either of us are gonna survive this. I could just tell that there was no reasoning with him, and he was quickly figuring out that I'm not armed. There was a moment that probably only lasted a second but felt like minutes where me and him were both silent, just staring at each other, eyes locked, waiting for the other person to make the first move. In that moment, the elevator dinged and 2 cops came out. Ex-boyfriend barricaded himself in the bathroom next to him, and I got the victim out of there and ran back to the neighbor's apartment. I have never been so relieved to see police. Edit to address common comments. Yes, Mandarin has tones, but that's not the same thing as emotional inflection. The cops saw the guy holding the bloody knife, and I was wearing a uniform and had no weapons. They could easily tell who was the assailant between the two of us. It's very common for security guards to not have any weapons. The girl went to the hospital, and a few weeks later moved out of the building. I don't know what happened to her after that. The ex-boyfriend was arrested after being barricaded for a while. I don't know what happened to him. I gave a statement to police but was never called to court, so I assume he either pleaded guilty or was just deported. I'm doing fine. This happened a long time ago. Holy shit, what a story. What happened then? Was he arrested and convicted? I don't know if he got convicted. He did get arrested. He was barricaded for a few hours before a tactical team came and got him out. I didn't see it. I patched up the victim and stayed with her until EMS was cleared to come in. She moved out of the building not long after that for obvious reasons. I never got called to court to be a witness, so I assume he pleaded guilty or something. One day as a teen, a friend showed up with a classmate who we never really hung out with before that. That day, he found an occupied bird's nest in my window awning and flipped it, causing fledgling little birdies to glide in several different directions. No sign of parents. They couldn't quite fly yet. I went around trying to gather the little birds I could spot in a possibly hopeless attempt to put the nest back up and put the birds in it. This took a few minutes of treading carefully while scanning the grass left and right. Then I hear the freak kid say, "You guys won't be mad, will ya?" I look up and he's holding a cinder block over his head, standing over one of the birds I hadn't found yet. I said, "Yes I will," and he just dropped the block on the bird. Kid was a piece of shit and we never associated after that. Was the second one I read. I think I should stop. Yup, some threads aren't good for your mental health. Roommate meets a dude and invites him over for a beer. The dog would not chill when the guy was in the house. Ears back, hackles raised, continuous growl. An otherwise friendly dog just lit up. It was a very contagious feeling and we were all on edge except the guy, who acted like it was a natural response. Few months later the guy went to prison for the violent assault of a stranger. Animals always know before us. I had an abusive ex that my dog fucking hated. My ex was never left alone with him, so I know it wasn't because he was hurting the dog. 2+ years I was with this guy and my dog never warmed up to him. Fast forward another 2 years and I'm with a normal, non-abusive guy, and my dog immediately took to him. Lays on him, shakes from excitement when he comes home, even from the first month they met. I learned to always trust my buddy first and men second after that. I'm sure the dog does pick up on the bad vibes of the people, but they also know you very well and read your instincts. We tend to shush our gut reactions in favor of wanting to believe it's fine, especially women. Check out the book The Gift of Fear if you want to get more in touch with your intuition. Went on a coffee date with a guy off a dating app. He seemed quirky while texting, but meh, aren't we all so whatever. Met for coffee and he got angry that I bought my own, it's coffee, and while getting to know each other he cheerfully tells a story about popping the eyes off goldfish as a kid, and about watching his stepmom moving into his dad's house through the scope of his rifle. When I declined his very direct invitation to go to his apartment for sex, he got angry and said that he cleaned his apartment so I owed him, at least that much, before rejecting him. Then he waited in the parking lot to see which car I got into and presumably wanted to follow me home. I called the coffee shop from the bathroom and told them what happened, and didn't come out until he had been long gone. Editing to add, because I'm getting DMs about it, I was saying I bought my own coffee, not that I brought my own. That would also be hella weird. It was 15 plus years ago, I don't remember his name and I blocked him right away, so I have no idea what happened in his life after that. Oh my god you guys, I totally forgot that, when my best friend called to check in, we had a code for each other to signal if it was going poorly and the other of us might need help leaving. The code was she would ask about my asthma. I don't have asthma, and if I said it's fine she would know all is well. If I said it was bothering me she knew to make sure I texted her that I was safe within half an hour. As soon as I hung up he said, "Oh, is she checking that you weren't murdered yet?" and then stared at me. The whole thing was just awful and I'm super grateful I had a plan to be safe. Totally shallow, but he had horrendous gunky gross teeth. Like, I don't think he had brushed that month, much less after cleaning his apartment to prep for his anticipated obligatory sex face with rolling eyes. Rapey and murdery. Hopefully this dude is in prison. Imagine thinking anyone owes anyone else sex. Especially imagine that prepping for sex with someone requires them to participate. I mean, the guy thinking she owed him sex is the least surprising part of this story. When I was about 18, I helped a friend of a friend move. Dude was a weirdo, but I thought he was okay, did not really know him. He talked about his cat, but I never saw it, thought he was in a cage somewhere. After a couple of hours of hauling stuff, he opens the freezer. There is the cat, jumping out and running for its life. I was so pissed, but the guy laughed and was like, well, it's a hot day and I also did not want it to leave while we moved boxes. Like there was no other solutions. He thought it was the funniest shit. Cat got out and we never saw it again. Hope it did not get frostbites, it was there for at least 2 to 3 hours. Fridges and freezers need to be airtight to keep the air in them cold. Frostbite is the good outcome, suffocation was very likely. Hello, police. I need to report animal cruelty and abuse. Dude shoved his cat into a freezer for several hours. Quote, why is it always the cat brew skull 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 skull? I guess they're easier to torture than dogs because they aren't as strong or big. I makes me wanna vomit. I love cats, their perceived aloofness triggers psychotic control freaks. At a bar in Frankfurt, Germany, talking military stories with a soldier who was a former sailor. We both spent time in Subic Bay, Philippines. He starts laughing as he was telling a story about how a house manager at a brothel yelled at him for asking for a 12-year-old girl. He says at first she looked confused and then once she found out he was serious he forced him out of the brothel and called him bad person as he just laughed his way through the story. I was shocked and confused and kept waiting for the punchline. That sick son of AB** was telling the truth. I told him that I agreed with the old woman and that he was a F*** person he needed to seek help. We parted ways pretty quickly after that with him accusing me of being gay or something. I never saw him again, but I feel sorry for other people who don't know his true nature. Something that always gets me is that so many men admit to and even joke around about the most heinous shit with other guys. And so many men, unlike you, either mesh well with their sick nature, or are too afraid and uncomfortable to rock the boat and call them out. I wish there were more guys like you out there. Keep at it. Many serial rapists believe they're normal. They think all men do it, or would do it if they weren't weak. They use stories and jokes to look for support. When another man says, no, that's fucked up, that's not okay, the rapist might think that man is a wimp, but at least they won't expect that man to have their back. This reminds me of when I worked in the car industry and some of the guys were having locker room talk. One of the guys was talking about how he was at a party and took a drunk girl upstairs and had his way with her while she was passed out. No punchline. Dude was mid-40s. He looked at us like, guys, I thought we were telling stories about our escapades, and the other salesman said, yeah, but usually it doesn't involve anyone committing a felony. Locker room talk is testing to see how many rapists you're in the room with. Uber driver on Christmas Eve tried to show me videos of people's corpses after an accident. I've noticed that's something firefighters and EMTs love to do. Not sure why. I mean, if you want a real sad answer, for at least a decent amount of them it's probably the result of years of suppressed and unaddressed PTSD from all the horribly traumatic events they have experienced. I knew a firefighter with the darkest sense of humor I've possibly ever heard, and he often joked about having to drink himself to sleep so he wouldn't constantly have nightmares.